It is the first time she's talking since the death of her beloved husband, Harry Hallman Jr. And in this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I talk exclusively with Brooke Hallman. Well, Brooke, this is my first time actually meeting you.
Well, and also you.
Thank you. We've been talking on Facebook, emailing, and on the phone.
Right.
Tell me, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm busy.
That's right.
I stay really busy.
Yes. I know this is very difficult to talk about, but it's been 2 years since Harry Hallman passed.
Right.
Tell me, how are you adjusting to life without him?
I'm adjusting very well. Very well.
Yeah.
I have my business I'm running, and I stay really busy, and I know that he's, as they say, the old cliche, in a better place.
Yes, yes.
And so I'm doing well.
And what are your memories of Harry?
Well, my memories of Harry are before he got dementia, which he was very caring, very good businessman.
Yes.
He was one of the few honest politicians.
I agree.
And he prided himself in that. He was very honest.
Yes.
Even to the point where some people didn't like that.
Well, and I know this is also difficult to talk about, but let's go back to 2008, when you first heard that he was diagnosed with that. What were your first thoughts?
Well, actually, to try to tell a type A personality who is in charge of a lot of things, that they have something wrong with their brain, that he was in denial for several years.
Wow.
Yes, but as I told his family doctor, you don't live with them.
Right.
And that's the thing with dementia patients, is that they can go in and sound perfectly normal to their doctor or their friends.
Yeah.
And they could get away with it for quite a while.
Sure.
But he had a very big support group with the mayor's office.
That's great.
With me.
Yes.
And so it was very scary. It was very frustrating for him.
And for you, how did you keep your calm?
Well, I have a medical background.
Yes.
So I think that's how I kept my calm.
Yes. I want to talk about when you and Harry actually first met. I'm thinking, was it love at first sight?
Well, it might have been. I was in nursing school in Wilmington, North Carolina.
That's right.
And he was at Wilmington Junior College, which is now UNC Wilmington.
Right.
And we had a welcome dance for the nurses, the nursing students.
Yes.
And he came and asked me to dance right away. So.
And the rest is history.
There you go.
For those people who don't know Harry Hallman, they knew him as a politician. But to you, he was a gentleman.
Exactly.
And who was him as a gentleman?
Well, he was just very, as I said before, caring and sensitive. Probably wouldn't have wanted all of his friends to know that he was a sensitive, caring person. Maybe, but he was always that way. Very, 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 very attuned to his family.
Yes.
And dedicated to his work and family.
And he entered politics in the late 80s. Tell me, what were your first thoughts when he told you that he wanted to get his hand into politics?
Well, I was working with EMS. I started working with EMS in 1984. So I was away from home every third day. And, I think the reason we stayed happily married for 54 years is that we let each other have our own things, our what do you call it, freedoms, because if he wanted to do that, I supported him.
Oh,
and
good.
He supported me with my things.
Yeah. And I read, too, that he was working for BP and FINA in real estate and retail sales.
Yes, he did that for quite a few years, up until we moved here in 1974, and he went in business with Henry Tecklenburg.
Yeah. Talk to me about the relationship with those two.
Well, it was interesting because Henry was a Democrat and Harry was a Republican. But Henry was able to invest in the business,
right,
and knew that Harry had the expertise to find new sites for stations and things like that. So that was good. And then very soon Harry paid Henry back, and they were equal partners then.
Yes. And we were talking about this recently over phone, but I know you're busy because of prom season.
I am.
Talk to Charleston about your new business.
Well,
So what?
see, it's not a new business.
Okay.
Because I call it my fourth career. Because I raised children. I was a nurse. I raised children, then I was a paramedic.
Yes.
And when I retired in 2000,
Right.
as the oldest female retiring paramedic,
Wow.
street paramedic, I retired at 65.
Wow.
And I was always sewing things.
Yes.
So some of my friends said, well, you ought to just charge for it. So basically, I started my business about 2001.
Wow. And how's that going right now?
Oh, it is going phenomenally well. I don't even advertise. I never have advertised.
Just like I don't do this with
It's word of mouth.
Right, yes.
And if you have a reputation and you do well,
Yes.
at which that sounds a little bit presumptive, but people come back to you.
Yes, indeed.
So right now I've got about 18 prom dresses hanging in my room, ready to be worked on, and I've gotten out several.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
fun. And you touched on this earlier, but you were a paramedic for the Charleston County EMS.
Yes, for 18 years.
Yeah, from 1984 to 2002. Tell me, where did that experience, where did that love come from?
Well, I was a nurse. I was an OB nurse. I worked labor and delivery for 18 years. 18 seems to be my favorite number.
Yes, yes.
And when we moved here, my children were in the 10th grade, the 7th grade, and 3rd grade. And I quit working, and I took care of them.
Right, yeah.
And my youngest daughter was getting ready to graduate from high school.
Okay.
And I was planning to go back to work. And I went to one of the hospitals and said, I want to come back to work. And they said, you've been out too long. You need a refresher course. And I said, well, sign me up. And they said, there's not one available. So I went to MUSC and talked with the lady in labor delivery. And she said, well, I'm a hospital school of nursing graduate also. If you come and pledge some time with us, I'll train you and you can work with us.
Right.
Well, literally, 3 weeks before that was supposed to happen, my daughter and I were on Johnny Dodds Boulevard,
Sure.
which wasn't Johnny Dodds back then.
Right.
In front of Dr. Pierce's office there, and there was a wreck. There was not a pedestrian. And my daughter said, Mom, are you going to stop? You're a nurse. And I said, well, yeah, I guess. And I stopped, and it was a severe auto pedestrian. The man was not dead, but he was very seriously injured. And the EMS was across the river because they were painting the bridge. And they were across the river, and they couldn't get back right away.
Back then they had the Cooper River bridges.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Pierce came out with towels, and we covered up and everything.
Yeah.
Well, eventually they came, and I watched them load the person up, and I thought, gee, that is really neat.
Yeah.
You know, that's a neat thing to watch them do that. And this is a true story.
Okay.
I went home and I said to my husband, I think I'd like to do that. And he said, well, that's good. Why don't you do that? And I called EMS. I said, I'm a nurse. I'd like to come to work with you. And they said, we don't hire nurses. You have to be an EMT. So I said, well, how do you do that?
Right.
Well, you go to Trident.
Okay.
So I went out to Trident Tech the very next day. I said, I want to sign up for the EMT class. They said, we have a class starting next week, and there's one opening. There's one opening.
Yeah.
And I signed up for it.
That's good. That is so good. And then I read too, you worked at several hospitals from Columbia to Florida as an RN.
Yes, I did. I worked in St. Vincent's in Jacksonville.
Yes.
I worked in Gainesville at Lachway General.
Yeah.
I worked in Presbyterian in Charlotte.
Yes.
So I worked in several hospitals prior to that.
You know, as I was doing my research, I read that you were called Shirley Carson in high school.
I was.
Where did Brooke come from?
Well, my dad was in the Marine Corps, and we were in Camp Lejeune, and I was in high school, and he went to Korea.
Okay.
And he came home from Korea, and he'd been gone 2 years, and he came home and I was 16. And he told my mom, he said, the girl talks all the time. She is not Shirley, she is a babbling brook. And so there came my nickname, Brooke.
Really?
Yes.
Well, you know, I do this thing called Describe to Me the Following One Word. And I want to talk to you about camping. How can you describe camping in one word?
Wonderful.
Yes. Girl Scouts.
I did Girl Scouts, but I like to go camping in a tent.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, I have a tent.
You do that one day.
Me and my dog.
Is that right?
We go camping.
Speaking of dogs, pets.
Yes.
In one word.
Lovable.
Facebook.
Inspiring.
It really is.
It keeps my mind active.
Yeah.
I heard the other day where they said that elderly people who are on Facebook have less dementia than the people that don't.
Wow. One word to describe Brooke Hallman.
I don't know.
When you look into your crystal ball, what do you see in your future?
I really don't know, because I'm at the age when it probably isn't a real long future, but happiness.
Yes.
Happiness.
Well, Brooke Hallman, was so great talking to you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you doing that.
Anytime.
Thank you.
I'll see you on Facebook.
I sure will.